Hey folks, Matt from artoftheimage.com. We've got a writer writing in. This is Malik. He's writing in via email. Curious or interested in switching to a Nikon from a Canon. In this case, specifically the Canon 700D or the T5i. He writes in, he says, "Hi Matt, I've been watching your videos on YouTube about Nikon and surely have made my mind on shifting to Nikon from Canon, the 700D, which I currently own. As I mentioned, that's the T5i. As I want to cover events and portrait shoots, what combination would you suggest? The Nikon D7200 with a Sigma 17-50 OS and Sigma 50mm f1.4EX DG HSM, the Nikon D7200 with a Sigma 17-50 OS and Nikon 85mm f1.8G, or the Nikon D610 with a Sigma 50mm 1.4EX DG HSM. Waiting for your kind reply. Thanks in advance. Regards, Malik." Now, thank you, first of all, for your question, and appreciate that. The three combinations that you've outlined here are all decent. The 610, though, which would be my favorite camera of the three, or of the two cameras in the three combinations, with only the 50, though, is your most limiting as far as what you can shoot, especially for events. For portraits, you might be able to make do. I would actually, if I was going to get the 610 and one lens for portraits, I would get the 85mm f1.8G that you'd mentioned in number 2, because that's actually a little long for portraits, in my opinion, on a 7200, but it works great on the 610. Let's have a quick look here at the T5i you're coming from. So, to refresh our memory, the T5i was an 18 megapixel APS-C hybrid CMOS sensor. It had phase detection AF. It's got the Digic 5 processor. It had 12,800 top or 25,600 expanded ISO. It's a 5 frames per second continuous shooting. It's a 9-point AF system, all sensors cross-type, central sensor f2.8, it's from the 60D. 63 zone metering. It's only got 1080p 30. Now that's, I say only, that's by today's standards low, but it is still, it was good when the T5i was out. We have a 1.04 million dot 3:2 touch sensitive vari-angle LCD, which is nice. So there's a little refresh so that we're remembering what we're talking about, what you're coming from with the T5i. Going to the 72 is going to get you a better performing sensor and 6 more megapixels. We're going from 18 on your T5i to 24 on the D7200, and one of the best performing APS-C 24 megapixel sensors out there. So to go to that is definitely going to deliver an increase in resolution and in sensor performance. You're going to get better dynamic range, better high ISO, plus more megapixels. So definitely a benefit. Now, there again, we go to the 610. We're not seeing an increase in resolution, but we are seeing probably about a 2-stop advantage over the 7200 for high ISO. Plus, don't negate or don't forget the ability when you're on full frame to use to use lenses as they were designed. They're inherent. For instance, a 24-120 f4 VR from Nikon, which is probably my favorite lens to pair with that 610 for a standard zoom, gives you a 24-120. 24 is pretty wide on a 610 on a full frame camera. It's not that wide on APS-C. So for me, a great kit would be the 610 with the 24-120 f4 and an 85mm f1.4G. An 85mm f1.8G. The f1.4 is great too, but the 85 f1.8G is your best value. Very good lens, still very fast. I don't really think most people need the bump up to the f1.4 as far as price is concerned. Money's no object by all means, but that would be a great setup that I could shoot pretty much all events and portraits with. If I need something longer at that point, I'm going to either look at a 70-200 f2.8, or I'm going to look at a less expensive option like a 70-300 variable aperture from Nikon, or even if I really want the range, depending on what I'm shooting, a 200-500 VR from Nikon, which is a phenomenal lens. Really like that lens. So what it comes down to here is, of your three options, you got a 7200 with various choices. Between the two 7200 options you have there, I will go with the Sigma 17-50 OS and the 50mm f1.4 from Sigma. Actually, if you want to save a little money, I would go with I think the Nikon's a little bit cheaper. I'll put the links below. You can check out the price. But I would go with the D7200, the Sigma 17-50 OS, and a Nikon, either an f1.8G, which I love, or if you want that little bit of advantage for speed and better low light, I will go with the Nikon 50mm f1.4G. I'm not knocking the Sigma there at all. A lot of people like it. I like both of those 50s from Nikon, and that's my preference for which one I would buy. Now, the 610, love that camera. But if it looks like for price-wise, you can only afford the 610 and one lens. So if you were going to get the 610, I wouldn't get the 50 from Sigma. I would get the Nikon 85 f1.8G that you'd mentioned in option 2 with the 610. Great portrait setup right there. Perhaps you were looking at using the Sigma 50 with the 610 because you thought you could use the 50 as an all-rounder. And you know what? You could. The 50 could be used for portraits and it could be used to cover events, but I think you're going to find yourself limited. If you have the budget or think that you could soon include a standard zoom with that, as I said, what I would buy right now, if I wanted to shoot some weddings and events and I wanted a good budget setup that's very high performing, I would get the 610, I would get the Nikon 24-120 f4 VR and the Nikon 85mm f1.8G. Love that setup. Great kit. Super good performing cameras in terms of performance, dynamic range, high ISO, strong autofocus system. Not the class leading. It's not as good as, say, the 750s or the 810s, but still very, very good, especially if you're a center focus guy, and two great lenses to go with it. So my preference would be the 610 with those two lenses. If you can't afford more than one lens with the 610, though, I'm a little worried for you covering events and portraits. I would go with the 7200, the Sigma 17-50 OS, and the Nikon 50mm f1.4 or f1.8G. If your heart's set on the Sigma, then go with that as well. It's a good focal range. So I would either go with option 1 with those caveats or option 3 with the 610, but again with those caveats. What do you guys think? Do you agree with me? Would you go with the way I've laid it out there? Would you go with those options as I've spec'd, or would you go a different route? Would you choose one over the other here? What would you do? Let us know and why. Let's help out Malik here. And thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your questions. Stay tuned. We'll be back soon here at artoftheimage.com.